Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. There's something about the difficulty in life that it can sometimes make us think we're doing it wrong. But the secret to this thing, the secret to living the spiritual life is when you go through the hard times, not to quit. To keep coming back to the community, keep coming back to the teachings, keep coming back to the practice. Nobody is exempt from hard times. But living our life on a spiritual basis gives us a better response to the difficulty. I love that song. This is not my sermon. This is just some added bonus material you're getting. So welcome. You're welcome. But it does fit. But before I get into the material that I've prepared for you today, I first have a sermon joke, which is, some of you have told me it's your favorite part. So this comes from the internet, not from TikTok, evidently. So if those of you who are grieving TikTok, I have a feeling there's going to be a resurrection, but I bless you. This is from Instagram. This woman said, "I went outside today and I saw my neighbor talking to her cat, and it was obvious that she thought her cat understood her. I told my dog about it and we laughed and laughed." Isn't it funny how we judge others for doing things, but that's not what I'm doing. We are in part 3 of this series called Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, and our source material for this is Eckhart Tolle's wonderful book, A New Earth. Last week we talked about the ego, how our identification with that part of us, and we also gave you some distinction between the psychological ego, which we all need, and we want a healthy one, and the spiritual ego, which is sometimes what we call ego, edging God out. It's that part of us that is separate from spiritual reality, or thinks it is. It's mistaken in that thought. But the ego will get us into a whole lot of trouble when that is our main identity. And so what we're talking about today, the title is Breaking Free. And we want to break free of that ego identification. And in the book, Eckhart really talks a lot about what he calls the pain body. I think that he may have created that term. But it's very closely related to the ego. We all go through difficult times. And when we go through, even trauma, when we go through those painful experiences, the ego, and Eckhart describes it, that the ego convinces us that this pain is what we are. And it becomes our identity, it becomes the story we tell about our lives, and it keeps us from the truth of who we are. It keeps us from our freedom, and it keeps us from discovering our soul's purpose. That we're living a false story. Eckhart says that we're walking asleep through life because we have identified with something that we've experienced but is not the truth of us. Now, a lot of the traditions have different names for this, different terms that they use. There's a wonderful Greek, Turkish, Armenian spiritual teacher named Gurdjieff. Anybody ever heard of Gurdjieff? Yeah, some of you know him. Wonderful. The modern Enneagram is largely attributed. He believed that it was an ancient teaching, but he brought it forward. He lived and taught in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Well, he had a way of framing this idea that we have this ego self and we have this true self. He said we are personality and we are essence. That's a beautiful way of just framing that. And in New Thought, we talk about the conditioned mind, the separate self. And of course, we talk about the ego, the pain body. The truth is there's only one of us here. We're all expressions of the one life of God. But in our mind, we can divide ourselves from the truth of who we are, and there are many terms that will begin to describe that. But I like Gurdjieff's frame, that we have personality and we have essence. We don't think of our essence as our soul, that part of us that is always connected to God. And then we have the personality, which is often, it's conditioned. It's the family history that we bring in. I'm not going to get into this too much. I do believe that we carry part of, how do I say this? Maybe it is the shape of the soul, no matter what our incarnation experience is. And if you've ever held a baby, you know that. There's somebody there, you know? And when you've had children, particularly if you have had more than one children, they come in as who they are, don't they? And yet, there is something that is shaped as well. And so what we want to begin to do is we're talking about breaking free is just first become aware that a lot of what we think we are, we ain't really. Yeah. What we've identified as is not really the truth of who we are. It's part of the personality, it's part of and everything in the personality can shift and change. As a matter of fact, I've heard a psychologist describe what we think of as our identity. It's like the wave crossing the ocean. And it does have form, it has shape. You can see, oh, there's that wave, it's going over there. But did you know that by the time it moves a few inches, every molecule of water that was in that wave is left over here? There's a pattern of energy that keeps the shape of the wave going, and that's what we do. When we hold on to the ego story, when we hold on to our pain body, we can sure feel like this is who I am, but it's actually not the truth of us. And if we are to, I heard this in a recovery meeting once, a guy, very funny man, he said, well, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. That's a very egoic statement. But let's go to what Eckhart Tolle says about this. If your conscious presence that breaks the it is your conscious presence that breaks the identification with the pain body. When you don't identify with it, the pain body can no longer control your thinking, and so cannot renew itself anymore by feeding on your thoughts. Do you hear that? That pain body, that story of our brokenness and our victimhood and our abuse, that story of our inability to earn a good living, that story of how nobody likes us, we can't do a good, healthy, loving relationship, all of those things, that's our pain body, those thoughts. And when we identify with it, we keep feeding it. We keep feeding that pain body. But when we become present in the presence of the truth of who we are, it begins to dissolve. He says the pain body in most cases does not dissolve immediately, but once you have severed the link between it and your thinking, the pain body begins to lose energy. Your thinking ceases to be clouded by emotion. Your present perceptions are no longer distorted by your past. The energy that was trapped in the pain body then changes its vibrational frequency and is transmuted into presence. That's what we're trying to get to. When we begin to break apart those old tapes, we used to say, and I guess now we'd say sound files that we have in our mind, when we break free of all of those old ways of thinking about ourselves that we know are not the truth of us. Now, in some religious circles, they'll tell you that is the truth of us unless you come here. Unless you get on our side of things and you use our doctrine and that's not what we teach in unity. We teach that all beings are truly essence, that's presence, that's what they are, that's what we all are, but we don't know it. And what we try to do here in this church is give you some tools to break free from that conditioned thinking, that limited thinking that keeps you small and in bondage to your ego. We want to give you an opportunity, an invitation to break free into something greater, the truth of who you are, and there is your purpose. Eckhart was working with a young woman, he talks about it in the book, a woman in her 30s, and he said as soon as she came in, she had this kind of practiced, poised presence, but as soon as he started working with her, he could feel this huge pain body. She had been traumatized quite a bit, and she was really just in a lot of pain all the time. This is what he said. When he asked her to be present to the pain, she resisted. She couldn't do it. And he said, at this moment, this is what I feel, I said. This is what you feel, I said. There is nothing you can do about the fact that in this moment, this is what you feel. So instead of wanting this moment to be different from the way it is, which adds more pain to the pain that is already there, is it possible for you to completely accept that this is what you feel right now? And he reports in the book that she couldn't do it, and he kept working with her. until she finally could. She was terrified of just being with the pain. And the moment that she began to just let herself be present and admit that she was hurting, this space opened up around the pain. And the process of beginning to disidentify with the pain was there. My friend Cynthia James says that we are all, that none of us is as evolved as we think we are. And I think you can take that to the bank. What we think about as our level of conscious evolution and healing and growth, that's a good day. That's when everything is fine. There's plenty of money in the checking account. Your kids are not acting crazy. You don't have a cold that won't go away. In those days, it's really easy to go, I am pretty evolved. But at the level of your evolution, your awareness, your consciousness is the sum total of all of it. And where are you when the relationship ends? Where are you when the check bounces? That's part of where you are too. And what we tend to do, because we don't want to admit that we haven't evolved, we will resist our feelings around what is. We resist letting ourselves be sad, be angry, all of that, be afraid. That's all part of it. And if we will just stop resisting what is, then what happens is that pain body will be transmuted. The emotions will come and they will go. This is why we teach grief work so much here, because it's necessary. If you don't let yourself feel the sadness of your grief, it stays stuck in your body. And what we want to do is just be present to it. My mentor and teacher of many years, Reverend Dr. Petra Weldes, when her mother died, she did our church a great favor, and she just let us see her grieving. And she taught about grief, and she told us what she was experiencing. And after weeks of this, she finally said, I finally figured out what grief work is. People have been saying you got to do your grief work. I finally figured out what it is. You just give yourselves time and permission to feel how sad you are. And then healing can occur. Then you realize that you're not that pain. Now, with loss, I think that the sorrow stays with us, but it changes. My sweet dad died, it'll be 9 years this October 30th. And I was with him. All of us were gathered around the bed as he died after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. And there are moments still, almost 9 years later, I'll think about him and I just weep. I miss him so much. So the sadness is still there, but now, it just helps me feel close to him. I remember how much I love him. I remember what an important role he had in my life and in my growth, my healing. So if we're going to break free, we're not going to do it by resisting and telling ourselves we're not having this experience. That is not the way. When AA was first being formed, they wanted to call it The Way Out. But then there was a big Christian book that had just been published in the 1930s at the time. It was a bestseller, so they had to come up with something else. So they just named the book Alcoholics Anonymous. But the teaching in recovery is that the way out is the way through. You got to go through. The way out is through. You've got to deal with it. You've got to be present. And presence brings us back to the truth of who we are. And so this is how we awaken, is by being present to what is and not resisting it. Eckhart Tolle talks about the difference between inner and outer purpose. Sometimes when we're trying to discover what our purpose is, we think it's a job. We think it's a degree. We think it's a book. We think it's a role that we play. And that could be considered outer purpose. But what Eckhart teaches us, and this is what I've been practicing for a long time too. I used to teach classes on this because this was my experience, is just be who you are and keep following that, and the doing will come from your being. Tolle says this: there is no substitute for finding true purpose, but the true or primary purpose of your life cannot be found on the outer level. It does not concern what you do, but who you are. That is to say, your state of consciousness. And when doing becomes infused with the timeless quality of your being, that is success. Unless being flows into doing, unless you are present, you lose yourself in whatever you do. You also lose yourself in the thinking, as well as your reactions to what's happening in the outer world. Purpose is really important. You want to feel like your life has purpose and meanings. Purpose and meaning. I've wanted that my whole life. I knew that I wanted my life to mean something. I knew that I wanted my action and my work in life to contribute and be a part of something. And you know my career plan? You know what it's been the whole time I've been doing it? It's just be who I am and walk through the doors that open. That's all I've ever done as far as planning a career. That's it. I resisted most of those doors. I didn't want to be a minister. It was the last thing in the world I wanted to be. I had a cool job. I was a musician. I was cool. But I felt this thing. As I was growing, I got to a point where I could no longer say everything I wanted to say in the lyrics of a song. And there was something else. The next stage of my evolution was coming, and I kept feeling like, I think I'm supposed to go do that. I don't want to do that. But as I became more present, it became clear. I was actually at a conference in Atlanta. I was doing music. It's a New Thought conference, and they're having a meeting for prospective ministerial students. And my boss and mentor, Reverend Petra, had told me I should consider it. And I was like, well, why would you tell me that? Then I was thinking about it. But I ended up in that meeting, the Q&A, with the dean of the school. And she knew me from my music, and she said, Michael Gott, what are you doing here? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not sure. But part of me thinks this might be the next indicated step on my path. And as soon as I said it, dang it, I felt it. It's like, crap. Have you ever had that cosmic click? You know, and you can't unknow. And I resisted it for the first 2 years I was in ministerial school. Like, why am I doing this? Well, I know I'm never going to pastor a church. That gave me a little bit of peace. You see how well that worked out. But I just kept showing up, trying to be as authentic as I knew how to be, paying as close attention to what I'm feeling, and when an opportunity arose, I'd go, that or no? Is this the door I'm supposed to walk through? And when I knew it was, I walked through it. Often, there were claw marks along the walls going to that door. And so my purpose is not being your senior minister. Did you know that? That's not my purpose. My purpose is being Michael, as fully and authentically as I can be. And right now, this is the Michael-shaped space for me to serve in, and I love this role. I love getting to serve this community. Because I get to bring all that I am, I get to bring my gifts and skills that I've acquired into this work, but my purpose is still to be authentic, to be me. Thank you. And I've got quotes to back it up. Frederick Buechner is a wonderful theologian and writer, and he says this. He defines vocation as where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need. And sometimes he said it as the world's deep hunger. But it's not go see where the need is, I'm going to fit myself into fit that. He said, no, what's your deep gladness? What's your joy? What is your authentic being? What do you resonate with? And then you'll find the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need. My favorite quote around this is Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman was an incredible man. I don't want to give his whole biography, but he was sort of a mentor for that generation of leaders in the 1960s and the 50s and the 60s in the civil rights movement of Dr. King and others. In the 40s, he founded a church in San Francisco that was going to be multiracial from the first moment, and that church is still in existence in San Francisco. He had a vision for harmony, for love overcoming hate. And this is what he said about purpose. He says, I don't need to look at this one. I know this one by heart. It's tattooed on my heart. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. That's what's being asked for. To find what makes you come alive. And it's going to be you. What it is you finding yourself. You're letting go of those old expectations and obligations. One of the reasons I love my dad so much is that he saw I had a talent in music, and he never pressured me to go get a degree that would help me earn a living. He never did. He said, do what God's gifted you. Go do that. Now, there were about 20 years when I doubted the wisdom of his doing that. But it's all worked out. That he was right. I had a gift. Something came alive in me in music, and I kept following that. And it turns out then people wanted to hear me do my music. It was quite a kick in the pants, I'll tell you. And there are times, I like what Tolle said about if we're not present, we can lose ourselves in our ego and in the outer world. But there's another way of losing ourselves that I have discovered when I'm really in my purpose. There are moments, and Ram Dass talks about this in his book, The Journey of Awakening. There's a moment when time expands, and I'm so present. He talked about a surfer being on the edge of the wave, and just everything is right. My skills meet the need. I know how to do this. I've had that experience, sometimes when I'm preaching, but mostly when I'm singing a song that just says, yes, I'm here. And the ego has no say. I'm not worried about what you're thinking about it. I'm not worried if you're liking it or not. I'm just in that moment, bringing my authentic self into my doing. It's beautiful. It doesn't happen all the time when I sing, but it happens a bit. And so the last thing I want to ask us today, where are we not being present? Where are we unwilling to be present to our very lives? I'm gonna share a story from the Bible, and I know some of you are already, your allergic reaction is happening as soon as I said it. And I do know that there are particularly the younger generations, the millennials and Gen Z, there's like and I get that it's 11 o'clock in the morning, there's this old guy in a suit with gray hair talking and singing. So, it feels like the old church that may have wounded you in the past, but I promise that what we're doing here is a little bit different. And the way we hold the Bible, I mentioned in my video for the prayer class that our greatest contribution to the realm of spiritual practice is affirmative prayer. One of the greatest contributions I think we've also added is something called metaphysical Bible interpretation, where we do take these old beautiful stories and texts and we see it through a different lens. It's similar, the way I'm going to do this story I'm about to read to you, it's similar to Gestalt dream interpretation, where we're not looking at all the characters as being outside of us, but everything in this story is me. It's an aspect of myself. And so you're going to get Michael Gott's version of metaphysical Bible interpretation right now. This is one of the miracle stories of Jesus. It's recorded in Matthew and in Luke. This is from Luke 8, verse 43 to 48. A woman was there who had a sickness that made her bleed. Her sickness had lasted for 12 years. No one could heal her. And she came up behind Jesus and touched his clothes. And right away her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. Everyone said they didn't do it. Then Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pushing around you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I felt the power go out from me. And the woman realized that people would notice her. Shaking with fear, she came and fell at his feet. In front of everyone, she told him why she had touched him. And she also told him how she had been healed in an instant. And then he said to her, Dear woman, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. In the King James, it says, the hem of his garment. She knew that if she could touch the hem of his garment, she would be well. The woman represents me, represents you. And there is this illness which represents our pain body, our false identities, the egoic things that we tell about ourselves. It keeps us limited. And Jesus represents the truth of who we are, the Christ essence that is in us too. And there's something between us and that teaching. And what I believe that the crowd gathered around Jesus represents our own mind, all of the ways we think ourselves out and of our truth, the way we think ourselves into such weird places. It's what Eckhart Tolle says. It's when the thoughts get attached to the pain body, it keeps getting energy. But we have this thing called volition. We have this thing called choice. We have this thing called agency. And this woman knew that she was not powerless, that she knew that there was something that Jesus of Nazareth represented in her own journey, and if I can just get there, something's going to happen. And so you can imagine if she had been having this bleeding illness for 12 years, she must be weak and frail, and yet she persisted. And yet She kept moving towards him, finding an opening until finally she could touch the edge of his cloak. And said instantly she knew she had been healed. It's interesting in the story, too, because, it's like, who touched me? That's the way I first heard that when I was a kid. It's like, was Jesus mad that she got healed? I didn't understand that. No. Jesus is asking for a conscious connection. This thing happened. Are you aware? Are you willing to own that you are now going to be different? And so she said she was shaking with fear. I have been shaking with fear so many times in my life. So many times where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be senior minister of Unity of Houston when we've gone through Hurricane Harvey, we've gone through COVID. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I've had fear. And she was afraid. But she knew if she kept on. And so what does Jesus tell her? He said, I felt the power go out of me, but who did she say did the healing work here? Your faith. Your faith. Your willingness to stand in a greater truth than you have yet experienced. Your willingness to move in the direction of something greater. To move in the direction of your freedom, your willingness to step and put your arm forward and say, this is mine. That is what healed her. And that is available to you, and to you, and to you, and to me right now. I don't know what it is in your life that needs healing, but unless you're far more advanced than I am, you got something. Because I got somethings. I still have things I'm working on. And this is always the invitation to reach towards source, to reach towards that truth of I am connected with God for all eternity. The mind of Christ is also in me. Keep reaching towards that. Keep moving towards that. And there is a temptation to stay stuck and just go, well, this is what I get. This is all I get this lifetime. And I'm telling you today, you have a choice about this. Did I say everything? So here's the thing. I did come to a point in my ministry where I just couldn't say everything I needed to say in a song, so I learned to preach. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. And then there comes a time in my preaching that I've said everything I know to tell you, and I've got to sing a song. Are you okay with that? Okay. So before I sing the song, I want to tell you a little bit about it, which I feel a little self-conscious about doing. The song should stand on its own, but this is from a Christian band named Switchfoot. And I first heard it through a Broadway singer, of course, not through the band. And her name was Megan Hilty. She recorded it. And I sang it here on the stage, I think even before COVID, with the whole band. It didn't quite land in my repertoire. And then a couple of weeks ago, I heard a different version of it, just a guy and a piano, and it broke my heart open. I was like, well, I guess this song isn't finished with me. There are some Christian words in this lyric, and before I sing it, I want to give you the metaphysics of it. On the bridge, it says this: what if redemption has stories to tell? Maybe forgiveness is right where you fell. Where can you run to escape from yourself? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Salvation is here. So that's what this song is about. You may have told yourself that you've missed your last chance at healing, whatever this is. You may have told yourself that I'm stuck here, I can't move forward. But I'm here to tell you, it's not the truth. Just in case I forget the lyric. And I practiced this a lot for you, but I'm older and I'm still going to have the words right here. Welcome to the planet. Welcome to existence. Everyone's here. Everyone's here. Everybody's watching you now. Everybody's waiting for you now. What happens next? What happens next? I dare you to move. I dare you to pick yourself up off the floor. I dare you to move. Dare you to move like today never happened. Today never happened before. Welcome to the fallout. Welcome to resistance. The tension is here. The tension is here between who you are and who you could be. Between what is and what should be. I dare you to move. Dare you to move. I dare you to lift yourself up off the floor. I dare you to move. I dare you to move like today never happened. Today never happened. What if redemption has stories to tell? What if forgiveness is right where you fell? Where can you run to escape from yourself? Where you gonna go? Where you gonna go? Salvation is here. Here, here, I dare you to move. Dare you to move. I dare you to lift yourself up off the floor. I dare you to move. Dare you to move like today never happened. Like today never happened. Like today never happened. Today never happened before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I need to offer a little prayer after that. Thank you. In this moment, I recognize that one perfect life of God, which is living itself in all beings, in all places, in all times, is living in me right now. And it is calling me forward into wholeness, calling me forward into greater aliveness. And as I know this is true for me, this is true for everyone within the sound of my voice. That we are being called forward, dared to move by life itself, challenged into a greater experience of life and freedom and peace and joy. And I say yes. I say yes, I am willing to extend my hand towards the hem of the garment, to know that the power of God is here waiting for my acceptance. And my faith is the way. And so what I know that right now in this moment, people are beginning to catch the hope, beginning to realize that their faith is building a bridge to their freedom right now. And so we don't have to design the road. We don't have to figure out what we're going to do. We just need to be who we are, to be the essence of God in human form, to be Spirit incarnate. And we resist nothing. We push none of our human experience aside. We are present to all of it. And we are healed. We are healed. In gratitude, we call it good. And so it is. Amen. Okay. You know it's true. And I'm going to say it anyway. If nobody has told you today that they love you, I love you. And if you don't believe that that's possible for you to do, I know that it's possible. Thank you. thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.